Addiction is addiction, and that's what's driving some of these kids out. But something, and I think we're incredibly well prepared at almost every level to seriously address the lethal consequences of addiction while college.
There's a lot of interaction with some of what we heard on the previous about the lack of access to mental health counseling and the tendency for athletes not to want to seek help of any kind, especially if, it may have been in the DSM for 35 or 40 years, but I think for a lot of people still don't necessarily examine as in that, as a treatment addiction, the scientific community has come around. Tim, maybe go next on.
Yes, I'll pick up on what you said, is the connection between these topics, right? And I think that, like everything in college sports, it's all intertwined. It all comes down to, in my opinion, values, right? It's just what do we value and why? And I think it's particularly interesting in the college sports context because we're always talking about higher education, right? So in this discussion, as with many other issues, the question is between commercial and social, or commercial and education, or commercial and health and safety. So those things, I think, are really underpin almost every issue in college sports, and this is no exception. Similar to what Keith was saying with respect to how we frame things from the athlete's perspective, they get penalized, right? They're team athletes, and that was the case. It's what troubled me too when I was on the enforcement staff, and since then, in seeing how we don't always analyze the larger framework for business, but instead focus on the behavior that is the outcome of that. And again, that's no exception here. Where I think if we look back, we're in a different era now. Historically, the NCAA, in fact, the enforcement staff, the NCAA enforcement staff was derived in the 1950s from gambling incidents. It's the reason that prompted investigations. City College of New York, NYU, University of Kentucky, Manhattan, and other schools were involved in athletes of those schools, the basketball teams primarily, were involved in point shaving that was they infiltrated by organized crime. And then finally, an FBI investigation, a sting operation had led to one of the athletes turning and uncovering a massive point shaving scheme that changed the trajectory of college sports. And even with some of those schools that were more concerned about the commercial aspects, they sort of de-emphasized some of their sports programs, including some of the schools I just mentioned were involved in those investigations. Others full speed ahead in the other direction. And I think that shows that's playing out right now in a different way. Because in the past, it was somebody gets into their ear, into your pocket, they present you with an opportunity to shake points or influence a game. Now what we're talking about is something that's in your hand. And it doesn't involve other people or organized crime or anything like that. Every person that we had represented in the cases I mentioned signed up through an app, used an app, didn't have connection with anyone else outside of that. There were no integrity concerns that were cited as part of that. So as Keith mentioned, the focus is often on integrity, but really what we're dealing with is a circumstance in which, in a totally different era, there may not be integrity concerns, but what there are impulsive decisions to use an app that everyone is using and placing bets that range from 50 cents to maybe $100 or so that come with some pretty serious consequences. And on top of the the mental health aspects of engaging in the behavior in the first place, you're also dealing with the mental health aspects of the penalties that you suffer as a result of that. As we know, most athletes identify as athletes first. We're going to take that away from them, and we're also going to remove from their access the most useful tool probably for educating them, which is the schools. So on the regulatory side, last thing I'll say is that schools are in the best position to have the most contact they have. They are in touch with these individuals every day. The education at this point has been woefully lacking. I mean, really bad. And it is often presented in sort of a situation like this, a room like this, at the end of the year in which we're going to dump 12 top of narrow NIL and all these other things, and you have to sort of sort through all that, and also identify what your priority is, and to just plan stuff with this gambling topic. So I would expect and hope that schools really focus more on the education because they're the best position to influence the athletes in that.
Please welcome Tammy Bauer.
Thank you, and on behalf of the Director of Education Fellow's Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome all of you to the event today. Thanking all of you for not only taking time out of your day to show up, but for some of the great questions that have already contributed to this. So I appreciate that very much. And on behalf of all of us, welcome to the event. We believe that college sports continue to contribute to vibrant campus opportunities and that athletes should be given that ability whenever possible and supported in every way possible. The key is to make sure that our athletes get a great education and that we eliminate whenever possible and as soon as possible anything that threatens their health and safety. That is a core tenet of the Drake Group Education Fund and our history. The award recipients that we honor today have played significantly roles on a diverse area of how to expand the rights and talk about athlete health and safety and the beneficial benefits of college sports. They have expanded opportunities for underserved populations in advancing gender equity, educating the public about the need to protect college athletes from discrimination, economic exploitation, physical and mental abuse. These are truly wonderful honorees that we are so grateful to have with us today. I'd like to ask Alyce to please come and stand beside me to do the honors of presenting each of the 3 awards being bestowed today. And in conjunction with that, I do want to recognize also the platinum sponsorship of the University of New Haven in honor of Dr. Scott, where he served as a member of the faculty for 41 years. Unshakable commitment to good scholarship, to dependence on research, and data, and a love for potential competitive athletes to develop and deliver profound helpful experiences to those who play. He is the Professor Emeritus at the University of New York Pompeii College of Business, a former defensive end at the University of Notre Dame's 1966 national championship. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Alan for his life's work in making athletics a better place for all. National Public Service Award, which honors an elected public official responsible for proposing legislation or policy changes that significantly improve the conduct of intercollegiate athletics, that enhances the rights of college athletes, and protects their education and safety. Our 2024 award honors and recognizes the persistent work of a member of Congress who has sponsored legislation to ensure gender equity in sports. She advanced House Concurrent Resolution 54, expressing the sense of Congress that Title IX applies to the NCAA, which should be working to prevent discrimination on the basis of sex in its programs and activities. She is the sponsor of H.R. 2532, the Women in NCAA Sports Act, or the WINS Act. And the WINS Act brings public attention to the fact that for decades, the NCAA has prioritized men's sports over women's sports programs. It has created, normalized, and perpetuated fundamental inequities between their men's and women's program. And ignored, rejected, or just generally inadequately implemented key recommendations from its own external reviews that identify or prevent these inequities. The WINS Act proposes a blue-ribbon bipartisan commission appointed by House and Senate leadership to conduct a transparent and comprehensive review of NCAA operations for the purpose of producing recommendations that would result in greater accountability and in sustained progress towards ensuring that all college athletes are allowed the same experience in college athletics, regardless of their sex. Her work advances the public's understanding of the importance of women's sports and the need for greater equity in what the NCAA funds and promotes. We admire her as an example, as a fighter for the equal treatment of women's sports coaches and athletes, and we applaud her model legislation to address fairness in college sports. Everyone, please congratulate the winner of the 2024 Training National Public Service Award, the Honorable U.S. Representative for New Jersey Select District Representative.
It is wonderful to be here. It truly is. I really thank you for that great introduction, Tammy. That was really kind. And I'm honored to accept this year's National Public Service Award. Wow, it's been a great few weeks for women's sports. I had so much fun watching the Women's March Madness tournament. We saw things that I think were truly historic. Caitlin Clark wrapping up her legendary collegiate career with the Hawkeyes, and Dawn Staley's South Carolina Gamecocks topping off a perfect season with the national championship. And as much as I enjoyed all of that, I'm a little bit competitive. So what I really wanted to see, quite frankly, was that viewership records in the Elite Eight just kept getting broken. So we saw the viewership records start there only to be broken by the Final Four, and again broken in the championship with a whopping 18.9 million viewers. And just because I'm so competitive, I will remind you that the men's championship was eclipsed by 4 million viewers.
And as if I could have wanted a better intro to our next award, our next recipient is an Army veteran, a Chief Executive Officer, and founder of Wrestle Like a Girl. As an athlete, she is a two-time World Bronze Medal winner, a World Cup champion, so impressive I truly remember, and a three-time U.S. national champion wrestler. She's the driving force behind high school and college women's wrestling in the United States, with a vision to see every girl in the world be afforded the opportunity to wrestle if they so choose. She considers sport a major vehicle for social change that will enable women to realize and exercise their power, which we know is an essential task now and forward. She founded Wrestle Like a Girl in 2016 by conducting wrestling clinics and programs throughout the U.S. before realizing and taking on the responsibility of knowing that women's access to sports and the resources required to support their participation would require policy change, as so many things do. She expanded the mission of Wrestle Like a Girl to then become the preeminent nonprofit organization advocating for the addition of girls wrestling programs by state high school associations and developing women's college wrestling at the collegiate level. There are now 45 states that have high school girls wrestling championships, and that is in no small part due to her efforts. In 2020, she led the effort to have women's wrestling recognized by the NCAA as an emerging sport. And in 2024, Wrestle Like a Girl raised $290,000 to support and televise the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championship. This year, the NCAA has recommended that the membership approve the first Women's NCAA National Collegiate Wrestling Championship to occur in 2026, the result of Sally's historic leadership, and we know that. Please join me in congratulating the 2024 Hero Award recipient from Wrestle Like a Girl.
I first want to say thank you to the Drake Group Education Fund, to the selection committee, to Donna Liliano, and to Julie Summer for this incredible award. Many times the work that I've done has been acknowledged, but never just me and being a brave soldier that had a vision that took a leap, a very courageous leap. I've often had to think about all those that came before me, recognizing it They were certainly deserving of equal access. They were certainly deserving of equal opportunity. But someone had to take a brave and courageous leap to open doors for them. And I'll tell you, when I founded Wrestle Like a Girl, I actually approached 5 of my teammates and said, I started this organization, but I'm not the one that should run it. Because I came from a disadvantaged background, I didn't come from notoriety, I haven't come from nobility, I'm not an Olympic gold medalist. And other people can probably do it better that don't have the same challenges of being a juvenile delinquent who has gotten into fights, mostly with boys. I've always won.
So for us, a $1,000 prize recognizes the print, video, or multimedia work of graduate or undergraduate student journalists. For investigative reporting on intercollegiate athletics, and that can be a lot of different things, we have a wonderful judging committee made up of, and I thank them all, Mark Hyman, Liz Clark, Michael Fletcher, John Miller, and Shannon Stovall. We appreciate them for their good work and their integrity that they bring to judging this competition and honoring these student journalists. The 2024 prize goes to a team of 4 student journalists at the Daily Northwestern at Northwestern University. These authors dug the fact behind a sparsely worded press release. You know, the ones that don't really say much. And they thought, this is saying something without saying something. Press release stated that the school's football coach was being suspended for 2 weeks without pay following claims of hazing activities and events. These 4 students took a vague university press release about an internal investigation and turned it into a national blockbuster story. Within 24 hours, they fleshed out the details of coerced sexual acts by building trust with a key source. Again, a difficult thing to do for any journalist. And for college students to have done this is really remarkable. They corroborated his assertions, persisted in the face of threats and intimidation, and their work served a great service while demonstrating the power of not only collaboration but of urgency, because the story needed to be told. They wrote former NU football player details hazing allegations after coach suspension, and followed it up with a report of former NU players described the racist environment and football program. The latter was a disturbing look inside the culture and racial dynamics of Northwestern University football team. Former players spoke in detail about ways in which their coach allegedly abused his position of power by making inappropriate and racist comments to players. Hazing allegations shed light on the lack of safety for these players. And this reporting elevated the question of how do we ensure that college athletes get the support that they deserve and that they're entitled to. The articles can be found in the QR code. Those are all online, so if you want to follow and read those articles, I highly, highly recommend it. So this year, representing the team of Nicole Marcus, Alyce Brown, Cole Reynolds, Divya Bardwell, please join me in welcoming Alyce Brown, representing the team, and congratulate our 2024 Student Journalism Prize winner for investigative reporting in intercollegiate athletics.
Thank you so much on behalf of myself and the rest of my team that couldn't be here today to the Dre Group for this incredible award. When we started reporting this on a weekend in July, when everyone else was, we all had our summer internships, and all of a sudden everything kind of took a turn. We spoke with that whistleblower, like Sally said, there's nothing as impactful as an affected athlete who was
conversation in college sports. To my immediate left is Jane McManus, our moderator, who has written for ESPN, Deadspin, the New York Daily News, and is the editor of the year's best sports writers. She is also a former executive director of Seton Hall University Center for Sport Media, who has appeared on national shows such as Good Morning America, CNN, and NPR. Jane's left is Arthur Bryant of Bailey Glasser, LLP, a lawyer who has won major victories in civil rights, constitutional law, consumer protection, and was the lead trial counsel in the first Title IX case. To Arthur's left is Jeffrey Kessler, the co-executive chairman of Winston & Strawn, who is one of the world's leading antitrust, sports law, and trial lawyers. To Jeffrey's left is Michelle Roberts, former executive director of the NBA Players Association. A trial lawyer, Michelle has worked on behalf of NBA players to ensure their rights were protected and they were compensated fairly. To Michelle's left is Brittany Whiteside, Vice President of Collegiate Partnerships with Altia Sports Partners, who has served at the University of Virginia on the athletic department's executive leadership team, overseeing corporate sponsorships, branding, marketing, broadcast, and strategic revenue generation, while also overseeing diversity, equity, inclusion, and Title IX.
Thank you all so much for being here. What an incredible panel. I have to say, it's a little intimidating to moderate a panel of this text. But I think it's going to give us a real chance to get into some of these issues and where things are right now. When it comes to unionism, like the idea of compensation, unionization, all of these different issues that seem to be on the horizon, or are they? So what I would love for each of you to do now is if we could just go down the line and if you could explain kind of what are the most pertinent issues in the space that you're personally working in right now, whether that's Title IX, the legal challenges, unionization, and then collectives. And how do you see the area evolving?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really honored to be invited. To me, I've done more Title IX cases for women athletes and for male athletes for that matter, than anybody in the country. I was the lead trial counsel in the very first such case back in 1985 against Temple University, and I'm still doing it just through the University of Oregon. Never lost a case, not because I'm a great lawyer, because they're all in violation. That's what's going on here. Every single school that's been threatened with a lawsuit has either 80% of the ones I threatened to settle without a lawsuit because they're so blatantly violent. The others we won. And that's what everybody's trying to do about this case, because the schools are openly in violation of Title IX. And so for me, the fundamental thing I'm focused on is all of the schools say, colleges and universities say, well, we're committed. It's not just the law. It's the right thing to do. So I'm saying here saying, so it's been 52 years. How much longer can we do it? And I want as many women athletes and where it applies to men athletes to be ready to sue the schools because you've got strong causes of action and you can get them in compliance. I want the NCAA held accountable for violating Title IX. It's taking a position it's not covered by Title IX, it is. I want Title IX expanded to cover NIL payments. We've just sued the University of Oregon. Let me give you one quick example, and then I'll pass it down the line. University of Oregon, which I was astonished to learn this about that school. It's got so much money, it's called Nike University, right? I mean, because Phil Knight came from there. And the co-owner of Nike was their former track coach, men's track and field coach. They created a women's beach volleyball team 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the only varsity team in the university and in the Power 5 that has not a single dollar of athletic financial aid 10 years later. Right? They would never do that to a men's varsity team. They have no locker room on campus. They have no practice or competitive facility. They're literally required
next to and uses the bathroom, a cinder block bathroom, where there are no, the public bathroom, where there are no doors on the stalls because there's so much drug and alcohol things. This is a college varsity athletic experience. And before you go in and expose it in a big expose, the women called and said, will you sue? I went to the school, I said, oh, sue you. Just please, get into compliance, and they insisted. So we sued them. I'm talking, women are 56% of the undergraduates. They get 49% of the student athlete opportunities. Those 49% of the athletes who are women get 44% of the athletic financial aid. They are treated out of $900,000 a year in athletic financial aid. 25% of the athletic expenditures go on the women, who are 49% of the athletes, and 15% of the recruiting dollars are spent on the women. And that's one of the premier intercollegiate athletic universities in the country. You know, playing for the national championship or close to it in football, competing same kind of level of basketball. It's got to stop. And so, sorry to go on so long, but that's my primary focus in this whole area. Whatever happens with everything else, the women are entitled under the law to equal opportunities to participate, equal athletic financial aid, and equal treatment.